Richard Majewski, and welcome to another edition of Take 10. Take 10 is a service department, corporate housing and global mobility podcast where we seek to offer insights based on informal chat and icebreaker questions to get to know the guests a little better, and followed by a summary of the guest's business so that you can examine potential collaboration. So without further ado, let's meet today's guest. Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm very excited. Actually, we're going off topic in terms of the normal service department sector, if you like. But this is something that since I've known you has always a topic that's always excited me, and who couldn't get excited about this? So over to you for an introduction, Chris.
Hi, good morning, Richard. My name is Chris MacNeil. I'm founder and director of London Discovery for a company called Cobblestone Chronicles Limited, a walking tour company based in central London.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, it's such an interesting topic, this, that, as I mentioned earlier, really, I will not be doing the usual kind of either ors. There will be, generally speaking, I think, all relevant to the topic of walking tours. So, should we crack on with these icebreaker questions?
I look forward to it. Thanks, Richard.
Oh, you have said that. If only you knew. No, no. Um, I've only been on one tour ever, actually, so I'm very interested in your answers to these. We'll start with the spooky one. Do you have a favorite local legend or ghost story?
A legend or ghost story? Well, do you know what? Going a little bit off tangent on that, I'm looking at the ghosts of what the coffee shop industry of the City of London of the mid 1600s has left as a legacy for us. I'm fascinated with the development of cafes and coffee shops and what that led to in terms of entrepreneurial spirit and business and the creation of insurance houses and gentlemen's clubs on the city. So I'm looking at ghosts from that point of view. What was created 350 years ago that we now have and adopt in our modern day lifestyle and culture.
That's fascinating, actually. There's a series, or a very short series, and I think it's on Netflix, like something like the history of coffee and the history of tea and the history of chocolate and what have you. And does go into then that the history, like of the coffee houses, and I think there were even chocolate houses in their time. So yeah, that's book me in for that one. That
Fantastic. I'll send
sounds.
you right up.
Um, in terms of when you're walking around, and obviously you're kind of like delivering your tour, has anyone ever thrown you? What's the most unusual question that somebody has ever asked that you might be able to think of? That natural tendency would probably be just to blank it out of your brain forever and hope that no one ever asks that question again. But are there any unusual questions that you've been asked on a tour?
Well, you do get questions. So I'm a Canadian. I've been here for 24 years in London with a background in corporate, and I think that what that does is it enables me to ask a lot of weird, wonky questions about how things work in London, and that helps inform my understanding and being able to respond to client needs. In terms of really strange off the wall questions, we do get the sort of question of, can you take us to Henry VIII's favorite pub where he would have been drinking, or can you take things that one really has to think about and say, would a monarch actually have wandered into a pub? Would that pub even still exist in today's modern time. So there's a lot of explanation and kind of helping our guests understand progression of history and where names and facts and dates fall in that very rich history that London has over the last 2,000 years, and maybe provide additional context to help understand why a question may be completely viable or maybe need to be reshaped and rephrased and answered in a different way.
That's hilarious. That could have been me asking that question. As you know, we've had a Sabbath last night, Sabbath networking, and yeah, I feel like I've just crawled from a pub, so I could have, yeah, could have been
Well, I
me.
hope, yeah. Well, you never know, and more often than not, there is a very genuine answer to questions like that. So, yep, you never know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there are. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like around Southwark Cathedral and what have you. I think it's a George, and I
Yes.
think, is it not the case that Shakespeare has put on some of his plays at the George? I'm not sure. Well, actually, is that true? Do you know whether that? Yeah, is that
Well, absolutely. So that would have been the George would have been a coaching inn for hundreds of years, and indeed that road, Borough High Street, that eventually leads to London Bridge, would have been a stopping point, a resting point for traders coming up from the south of England before they pay their one penny toll to cross London Bridge back in the day, so that they could trade within the city of London. So that's why you've got all those little alleys and little streets that are quite short and quite straight that jut off at 90-degree angles from. So there certainly would have been activity. There would have been trade activity. There would have been cultural activity. All the ne'er-do-wells, all the sort of really exciting people around there. Absolutely, definitely.
absolutely? You know, you say about ne'er-do-wells and what have you, and it's my understanding that when I first came to London, I actually lived just off Borough High Street. There's Long Lane, and then there's Tennis Street where I used to live, and that kind of those streets encircled pretty, you know, unremarkable piece of ground, which where there was once a prison, where I believe that Charles Dickens' dad was once imprisoned. But you say the ne'er-do-wells, and it's my understanding as well that London, the police force in London didn't have jurisdiction south of the river, and so people would like hop over the river, and they couldn't get chased south of the river, is my understanding. I don't know. Maybe in fact,
Exactly.
maybe that comes quite nicely and onto another question. We've got two more questions, and then we'd love to hear more about your business. Um, are there any myths or misconceptions about a place that you would like to clear up now? So, is somebody constantly saying that Charles Dickens' dad was in a prison, and that kind of thing? Is there any Are there any things that people constantly say, and you're thinking, "Oh, not that old one again"?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, the one that I would often point to is Big Ben. So in the Houses of
Right.
Parliament, most of the Houses of Parliament are basically 200 years old, with a tower that would have been known originally as St. Stephen's Tower and then renamed just over a decade ago in honor of Queen Elizabeth II, her 60th year on the throne. It's called the Elizabeth Tower. We have a lot of visitors who point to the tower and say, oh, that's got to be Big Ben. Well, actually, Big Ben is the loudest and largest and deepest sounding bell within the cluster of bells up at the top of the tower itself. Big Ben, the bell itself, was cast in a foundry in East London. So if you think about where sort of Whitechapel is and
Yeah.
the street that goes a little bit further east, there was a foundry that only shut in 2016 that was famous for the casting of the bell itself, and indeed the Liberty Bell, in the United States, the one that very often we say is cracked. So that's the typical one. Oh, can we see Big Ben? Well, you can kind of see the building where it's housed, but it requires a very different and very special trip to see itself.
Ha, brilliant. Oh, wait till I tell the family that one. Catch them out. Excellent. Um, in terms of, so I mean, I'm sure that you can't go down a street without either knowing its history or thinking about its history. But what would you what do you like to do when you're not working as such. So is it still just such an all-consuming hobby to look into the history of the street? So
So absolutely, I do a tour that's 50,000 steps. We start at Tower Hill and we go to Kensington Palace. If you do that as a beeline, it's around 18,000 plus or minus, but I zigzag up and down across the river. So there's lots of things that I do get to see, lots of change that I get to see. But what I really like to do is push my limits. I like to go down, maybe a street or into a neighborhood that I don't know so well. I like to stop and really stare at a building, try to get a sense of what its social history might have been, who might have lived there, what, sort of interesting stories might have gone on behind closed doors. Research the names of architectural styles and what would have been happening in society that might have informed building code at the time, to use modern terminology. My daughters, I've got two teenage daughters, and they ask me what I'm doing, being alone here in London for the summer break. They're off having a nice holiday. And I say, well, I'm going to be binge watching on Netflix, all these London-based, programs, or I'll be dipping into all those books on London history that I've been and they turned around and said, well, Daddy, don't you do anything else? And I said, well, I do, but that's really my go-to. That's what I absolutely am passionate about and enjoy doing.
yeah, and I can totally relate to that. It is so fascinating, the history of those streets. I mean, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on the history of Manchester and how that's changed and what have you recently. And yeah, yeah, I can be watching those well into the morning. So yeah,
Yes, and
uh,
there's some fascinating
well,
experts out there, aren't there, on very, very
yeah,
detailed topics.
yeah,
It's quite
yeah.
impressive.
No, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's been very, very interesting. So thank you for answering those questions. But Chris, over to you to tell us about your business, maybe some of the tours that you do. Over to you, basically.
Oh, great. Thanks, Richard. No, it's been great talking. So, as I say, I'm Canadian. I've been here for 24 years. My true passion has been in British history. That was the degree that I took at university back in Canada in 1990 to 94. Graduated from that, realized there were no jobs for British historians. My parents looked at me and said, "You didn't think that one through very well, did you?" So I had a life in technology, largely in e-commerce. I built my first website such that it was in 1994, would you believe? But really, in the last 7 years, I've been getting a lot more into guiding, working through some agencies, hotel concierges, residential blocks, businesses, and so forth. And last year, certified as a City of London certified tour guide. Um, Listeners might be aware of the blue badge and green badge qualifications. I'm a green badge qualified guide. My specialist area is the City of London, but I do offer tours either myself directly or through a close trusted group of fellow guides right across London. And they're mostly walking tours, although we will do some other types, driver tours and coach and so on. My interest, my focus personally is around private groups, smaller family tours. What I do is I tend to explain a lot. When we're back in North America and we read a book on maybe the Second World War, we read Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, we're going to see references to Mansion House and St. Paul's Cathedral. And these are concepts that are millions of miles away, different date, different time. I like taking my groups, the small families or indeed the larger corporate groups, a lot of hospitality groups, and explain what is going on at each site, why it's significant, why it was significant, why it continues to be significant. And it's just wonderful to engage with my clients and have, you get that point of recollection where they're saying, wow, I get it now. This is transformative. It brings all those weird, quirky names and titles to life and explains really, really well what's going on. So I hope that's something of an answer to your question. You can see I get very passionate
Mm.
about this and go a little off
Okay,
piece sometimes. But
go for it. And I, because I'm living what you're, I'm imagining very vividly how you're describing that, and I find it very exciting. And myself and my wife have been watching. It was a series, I don't know, Netflix or something called 1883, where it's like yeah, pioneers kind of going on the Oregon Trail and what have you. And obviously 1883, it says that the date. I think the sequel to that's 1923, and I think we started watching that. But there's another series and something to do with Gilded, but it's roughly the same time in New York, and it's just fascinating. Then where you're thinking the Wild West was like that, and and yet New York was such a civilized society and it got me kind of like searching on the internet, like where did they get their coffee beans from and things. So all those things as a kid, do you want some beans? Do you want some, because it seems so untamed, and yet. Back in New York, you've got obviously it's like approaching the Industrial Revolution time and all the well, boom that was happening in New York, I guess, with with all the people coming over from Europe. But yeah, no, it's just fascinating. Just I love history as well. I suppose is basically what I'm trying to say.
that's fun, and
Um,
thank you for telling me about those. I'm going to add those to my watch list for the summer. So thank you for sharing that.
no, it's a pleasure. Yeah, they are great. Um, Plus things I was wondering about when when you're describing your business. So you say the City of London. So what area? So it's the City of London. You don't go out of the square mile, or do you do like West End tours as well and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. So right across London, I'm very happy to deliver tours. My area of specialization is that square mile, the City of London, but I've got very strong competency across London. So we've got a lot of very highly qualified guides within London and indeed within the UK. The blue badge and green badge certifications are the common certifications that we like to think about. But there are a lot of other very, very qualified guides with a number of different specialists. So you can find guides that will have linguistic specialists. So maybe, you might have a client that is German speaking or Chinese speaking. So you have an appropriate language guide. There are guides who are very highly qualified in disability, for example. So how do you guide partially sighted people or people in wheelchairs? So there's a structure around that. Subject matter experts, so particularly arts or particularly food or particularly maybe architecture. There will be guides. So the blue badge guides are permitted to guide within major sites like Westminster Abbey and Hampton Court and Windsor Castle and the Tower of London and certain other sites. So amongst my network, we do have blue badge guides who will be able to do that. But I get approached by a number of different people with a number of different interests. I had one client who a couple, and they were heavily into branding in the United States, and they were not normally predetermined or predisposed to take walking tours. I offered them a tour of 2,000 years of font development, starting with the original Roman inscription of Londinium into a tablet, and then coming through the medieval times into the College of Arms and so on and so forth. They loved it. They found another retired couple had been to London several times for work purposes, for study purposes, personal. They knew London reasonably well, and they wanted to do something different. They wanted a tour of canals. So all along the Regent's Canal, starting at Paddington Basin and then ending in sort of the King's Cross area with a little bit of a stretch to the Canal Museum. So there will be the standardized ones. There will be the itches that need to be scratched. Oh, I must see the West End and all the theater district, and I'm very, very happy to deliver that. But then there will be the tailored, highly focused groups of this is my job sector, or I'm entertaining a particular client, or actually I'm studying this at uni, or whatever the case might be. And I'm very happy to deliver something very, very focused and very topical to that.
Fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned canals, and one of the videos that I was watching relating to Manchester was the history of the Manchester Ship Canal. So
Yes.
why it was there and what have you, and whole history behind that, which yeah, is fascinating. But won't go into that one now. There is such an interesting topic. We could go off at tangents all over the place, really, couldn't we? There's a couple of things, really. One, you mentioned about the 50,000 steps, which it blew my mind.
It's brutal.
And
It's
one,
tough. The next day, it is tough. Yeah.
yeah, my kids, they're kind of like aiming at 12,000, and I don't even have a clue. I've not got one of those watches or what have you, or whatever. However you do, you wear one of those? How do you know how many steps you've done?
I do. I do. Actually, the battery's off now, but I do have one of those sort of watches, and it does. So last year, it was September 2023 to 24. I did 5.5 million steps in that. So that's I had a target that I'm not sure that I'm going to repeat that this year. I've achieved my target. I'm very, very happy about that. But 50,000, it is an 8-hour tour. We do stop. We deliver it. I deliver it once a month. It does take take some effort to do, but a lot of the tours are a lot more reasonable. We stretch a mile over maybe 2 hours and go deep into subjects. So yeah,
Wow.
I'm not going
Yeah.
to threaten your audience with calluses after one of my tours.
Well, this is it. You've set the bar pretty high there. So 5 million, did you say? Wow. Um, in fact, on that topic, are you ever asked to do, or do they exist even, cycle tours? Would you be
Yes.
tempted to hop on a bike?
Yes. So I have been asked several times. So for example, the PR office, the communications office of Eurostar, when they were launching their London to Cologne run, had a press familiarization trip to London. And they asked me for a series of 3 walking tours and 1 cycle tour. A cycle tour has different insurance considerations and rules of the road consideration and upkeep of cycles themselves. I work with a kind of a partner that's a specialist in that. They are a name brand in London. You've probably seen them go around. There's sort of a teal colored bike with wicker baskets in the front. They're very, very good, very highly qualified. They do some fantastic tours into Leek Street, where they'll bring you out and you can spray paint on the walls of the arches at Leek Street just below Waterloo, and then into Covent Garden and so on and so forth. So yeah, I won't do a bike tour directly, but I'll work with a partner that will. And similar with driver tours, taxi cabs. We know a lot of black cab drivers, so we do that sort of thing. And yeah, there's different ways of handling those tours. Sorry, Richard, I seem to have lost audio.
Thank you very much. That was me.
There,
No,
there we go.
I thank you. Very discreet of you to, yeah, rather, you're on mute, Richard. Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. Um, Thinking about our audience and corporate service departments, corporate relocation. So we have individuals and families coming into London. Um, would there be, we'd obviously like to encourage engagement between the service department providers, the accommodation providers, and your own business, because one of the most interesting aspects, I'm sure, of relocating to a city like London is to find out about the city and its history, And so we've put your LinkedIn profile address on the screen there. But are there any? Would you like to, uh, as a parting kind of message, if you like, as we come to the end of this recording, are there any ways in which you would encourage engagement between the serviced accommodation providers out there and agents or booking agents and your own business? How can they reach you? How can they get to know a little bit more about your business?
Oh, fantastic, Richard. So I've met many people within your community, all fantastic people, and thanks to the wonderful work that you're doing around the SABA networking events, that's just a super opportunity for that networking to happen and that kind of cross-pollination of information to happen. So I would love to be able to meet a lot more people in the event space, in the sort of onboarding space for new corporate guests, for the sales space. We have a number of different ways that we can work together. So there can be structured tours, or there can be ad hoc tours of a how London works type of tour. Something as simple as how to use the tube, how to, order a coffee. Do you tip in cafes and pubs and that sort of thing? Or that can be a little bit more bespoke around, well, actually, you've seen the Google ads for, say, Westminster or the City of London or whatever. Let me take you to those places. We also have guests who arrive, and you mentioned about families, but particularly extended families. Oh, we've got Auntie Jane and Uncle Richard who are coming to London, and they're visiting. What are we going to do with them while I am in my day job in finance or in law, or whatever the case might be? Oh, well, let's hire out Chris and his colleagues to deliver some tours and help them have a touristic experience and a holiday experience while they're over here visiting us. And indeed, tapping into the corporate world, we do a lot of corporate tours as well, and that sort of fluctuates through the year, but it can be along the lines of client hospitality. How do we entertain clients? Around getting teams who know each other over Zoom, maybe the London-based team, the Madrid-based team, but actually getting them together to meet them in person. That's a different way of guiding. We point out a building, and then the 10-minute walk to the next building, they're talking to each other. We encourage that networking, that bonding. So absolutely happy to have any sort of inbound contact on LinkedIn, and the link is there. And then the website, cobblestonechronicles.co.uk, and I think you've got the link on screen as well. That is an idea of sort of terms and conditions and types of tours that we offer. But very happy to design both bespoke tours for audiences as well.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Chris. And I'd encourage viewers to contact Chris, because that sounds great. Some of those I never even thought of that bonding exercise, which would be so good. They go on a tour together like that. Fascinating. Oh well, Chris, I'd like to thank you very much indeed for what's been a really interesting take 10. So thank you for that and for your time. Don't go away. We'll just play the outro now, but you stay right there, please.
Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you.